Discover how an abandoned girl's life transformed when she unexpectedly met a billionaire, an intriguing tale of resilience and dreams unlocked. Lily stood behind the counter of the diner, the faint smell of burnt coffee clinging to her skin like the memories of homes she couldn't recall. She filled mugs and wiped tables, careful to maintain a bright smile, a shield against the weight pressing on her shoulders. Each clink of dishes echoed her internal struggle, an ever-present reminder of the family she yearned for, always just out of reach. With a deep breath, she pushed aside the thoughts of hope as she poured a fresh cup of coffee for Mr. Thompson, a grayscale figure in her monotonous life. But as the rain fell outside, softening the world into a blur, something shifted in the air. The bell chimed, and in walked Robert, an unexpected presence that contrasted the weariness of her world. He looked around, eyes scanning the struggling diner, yet somehow holding a spark of amusement mixed with melancholy. She could see the life of wealth hiding just under his skin, rich enough to overpower the downcast shadows of the diner. Out of habit, her smile flickered into place. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked, her voice steady despite the racing thoughts in her mind. "I'll have what you're having," he replied, a hint of an enigmatic smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The way he looked at her, not with the typical customer fatigue but with genuine interest, made her pulse quicken. For the first time, she felt seen, not just a girl who served coffee, but a person with dreams clamoring for space. Somehow, their conversation shifted from casual banter to deeper exchanges about aspirations, leaving Lily wondering how someone so far removed from her world could understand her struggles, yet here they were. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days turned into weeks, Robert became a mentor, illuminating paths she had never considered, exploring scholarships, college opportunities beyond the diner. But with every glimmer of hope, the old fears crept back in. Could she actually chase this dream, or would it slip through her fingers like sand? The faces of her past haunted her, whispering that she would never belong anywhere. The moment people found out she was a foster child during the heated debate at school unleashed a storm she couldn't predict. Laughter, derision, it crashed against her in waves, exposing raw nerves she had thought healed. Shame turned her stomach as she grappled with the debilitating heaviness of judgment, wondering if her past would forever shadow her future. Torn between the urge to fight her battles alone and the comfort of Robert's guidance, uncertainty twisted inside her. As the date of her presentation loomed large, she felt the suffocating pressure multiplying. How could she succeed on her own while knowing he had opened doors for her that she had once deemed locked? Every moment away from him twisted into feelings of abandonment, dredging up anxious questions. Was she strong enough to carve out her own identity? Maybe detaching from his influence was the answer, but with it came the fear that doing so meant losing the first real connection she had experienced. Standing alone in front of the mirror, her research paper in hand, she felt the weight of a life-defining choice pressing down. Choosing to sever ties or embrace the thread of mentorship that connected them. Her heart raced, muscles tightening as the clock ticked down. In this moment, she stood at the precipice of a decision that could redefine her very existence. Would she seize this moment, or let it slip away like countless others? As the rain continued to drench the world outside, so too did her uncertainty wash over her, and she was left staring into an uncertain abyss. Lily's heart pounded against her rib cage as she stared at her reflection, the girl in the mirror becoming a stranger in her own eyes. The research paper felt heavier than the reality of her circumstances, an embodiment of every ounce of doubt she harbored within. She couldn't keep waiting for a sign. The moment had arrived. But how could she step into the unknown when every time she ventured out, the whispers from her past echoed hauntingly in her ears, warning her of failure? Mind racing, she ran through the presentation in her head, recalling Robert's encouraging words. "You have a powerful story to tell," he had said just days before. Those words, once a balm to her soul, now felt like a shackle. What if she fumbled? What if she didn't measure up to the expectations he had for her? The clock in the kitchen was relentless. Each tick seemed to mock her hesitations, and frustration spilled over into action. She needed to focus. She turned away from the mirror, gritting her teeth in resolve, holding the research paper close as if it could fight off the darkness closing in. She reviewed her notes, attempting to drown out the cacophony of anxiety in her mind. Lily's hands shook slightly as she flipped through the carefully crafted slides on her laptop. Each slide represented not only factual information but also moments of her life she hadn't shared with anyone: the loneliness, the long nights spent dreaming of escape, and the resilience that had kept her moving forward. Maybe if she focused less on the fear of judgment and more on her journey, the power in her narrative would shine through. As the hour approached, her nerves twisted into tighter knots. She recalled Robert's parting words the previous day, urging her to remember the strength in her story. "They need to hear it, Lily. You need to own it." The weight of self-ownership pressed hard against her chest, but the idea of fully embracing her identity felt both liberating and terrifying. To quell the dread building within, she opened the window, letting in the crisp air filled with the smell of rain. With every inhale, she gathered fragments of calm from the world outside. She thought of Robert, how he had seen something in her worth nurturing. The quiet conversations they had shared enlightened her perspective on her strengths, and the idea of doing it alone seemed more daunting than it ever had been. Alone was a solitary journey she'd endured for too long. In that moment of clarity, she realized that letting go of Robert's mentorship wouldn't diminish her journey, rather, it would be a testament to her growth. She would integrate his guidance, not reject it. This presentation was about blending her past with the hope unfolding in front of her. With one last look at her notes, she stood taller, ready to transform vulnerability into strength. As she stepped out of her apartment and into the rest of the world, the pulse of uncertainty still lingered, but now there was a spark of determination ignited within her. Navigating through the hallways lined with peers who had once derided her, she felt every flicker of doubt battling against emerging confidence. This was the moment to assert her story. The world may have tried to define her, but today she would redefine herself. With the auditorium in her sights, she inhaled deeply, ready to face the cascade of eyes eager for her tale. Inhaling one last breath, she approached the stage, knowing nothing would ever be the same once she stepped into the light, but as she reached for the podium, she spotted a familiar face in the crowd, someone whose presence wouldn't let her hide behind courage. It was Robert. The revelation shook her resolve, making her question if this moment was hers to own, or if she'd forever remain a reflection of the influence he had cast over her life. Would she break free, or would the safety net keep her tethered to him? The moment of truth seemed nearer than ever, yet uncertainty loomed larger as she faced her audience, ready to unveil just what she had to offer. With an electric energy humming through the air, Lily's hands gripped the sides of the podium as she felt the collective gaze of the audience fix on her. A dozen pairs of eyes peered, each glance a silent challenge. Heart racing, she fought the instinct to retreat into her old patterns of self-doubt. This was a moment to confront not only the expectations of others but the enduring shadows of her past. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. Instead of glancing at Robert, she focused on the crowd, on the stories etched into the faces before her. The whispers of doubt began to fade, replaced by a thread of clarity as she recalled the countless hours she had invested in her research. These were not just slides, they were fragments of her identity woven together: the struggles, the victories, the lessons learned. She was no longer just a girl lost in the crowd, but a young woman ready to bridge her past with her present. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice stronger than she'd anticipated. "I want to share a journey with you, one that reflects not only what I've learned from my research but the very experiences that shaped who I am." The sincerity in her tone cut through the lingering nerves, and instead of feeling swallowed by the moment, she felt anchored. As she dove into her presentation, the words flowed with an authenticity she hadn't anticipated. Describing her aspirations and the barriers she had encountered, she intentionally unveiled pieces of her vulnerability that had so long been buried. The conversations with Robert had been instrumental, not only guiding her academically but awakening a sense of agency she had previously thought unattainable. Each slide became a narrative, a canvas splashed with emotional resilience. Yet, as she progressed through her detailed analysis, guilt crept in, hinting at a fear of overshadowing her own growth with Robert's influence. Would all this hard work still be hers if she continued to lean on his encouragement? The notion nagged and tugged at her like an anchor, threatening to drag her down as she faced the waves of uncertainty. She noticed Robert's shift in the audience, his brow furrowed in contemplation, and the realization struck her: her growth didn't negate his assistance. It amplified it. Instead of feeling trapped by the bonds of mentorship, she could redefine their significance, transforming dependency into synergy. Emboldened, she turned her focus from Robert to the audience, inviting them into her story while reclaiming her narrative. They needed to hear not just her findings, but the raw journey that informed them. Her words became a tapestry, weaving together feelings of isolation met with a dawning sense of self-worth. "Yes, I once felt invisible," she confessed, her voice unwavering now, but today, I stand here not as a product of my past but as an architect of my future. A ripple of energy pulsed through the room as she felt a bridge form between herself and those listening. There was a potency in her growing confidence that invigorated the atmosphere. The echoes of self-doubt faded away, replaced by an unwavering conviction. With each passing moment, the weight she had carried for so long transformed into wings, propelling her forward. Once she concluded her presentation, applause filled the room. It felt warm, invigorating. And yet, amid the cheers, one lingering uncertainty remained. Had she done enough to differentiate her own voice in the symphony of influences that had guided her? As she stepped away from the podium, Lily's heart beat not with anxiety but with exhilaration. She had stood tall, resilient, declaring her narrative. But as she met Robert's gaze, a profound question remained. In the wake of this triumph, how would she navigate the path ahead, especially with the complexities of mentorship and personal identity still undefined? The air crackled with potential as she turned away, not completely sure of herself, but certain that the journey was far from over. The real test loomed. How would she carve her space in a world still inclined to define her? Would she continue to seek validation, or would she adopt a more authentic presence, one that embraced her complexities? As the audience session closed, Lily embarked on the next phase of her journey. The stakes felt higher than ever, but she was prepared to confront her next fear, the fear of fully becoming her own person. The days following her presentation felt surreal, as if Lily were walking both among the familiar and the extraordinary. The applause had echoed in her mind, a buoying artifact of victory. However, each time she replayed the moment, insecurity wrapped its tendrils around the joy she initially felt. Had her growth truly been hers, or was it merely an echo of Robert's guidance? Determined to prove to herself that she was more than a reflection of someone else's influence, Lily sought opportunities to challenge herself. She scrutinized her calendar and identified the upcoming student-led conference on educational reform, one that boasted participation from various esteemed educators. This was a calling. But another surge of trepidation ran through her. Would she dare to present again? As the days dwindled towards the conference, she felt the weight of expectation from peers and mentors alike, including Robert. He approached her daily, offering support, occasionally dropping hints for her to seize this chance. Yet every suggestion felt heavy, a reminder of her reliance on his encouragement. Paralyzed by that weight, she momentarily retreated into doubt. One afternoon, while navigating her desk littered with research papers and half-drafted presentations, she caught sight of an old notebook filled with notes and reflections. It wasn't merely a collection of thoughts about her studies, it was a chronicle of her journey, her highs, lows, and epiphanies. Within that worn notebook, she rediscovered her passions and, more importantly, her unique perspective. Flipping through those pages sparked something in Lily. Instead of designing yet another academic presentation, why not harness her lived experiences alongside her research? Fury sparked within her. Wasn't her authenticity worth showcasing? With renewed resolve, she began writing a powerful narrative to accompany her data, layering facts with heartfelt storytelling. This was not just about educational reform, it was about a voice that had long been suppressed. Hesitation crept back in as she envisioned the audience's reaction. Would they respond to her approach or simply dismiss her ideas as too personal? The conundrum tossed relentlessly within her. How could she balance professionalism with personal narrative? Lily realized the crux of her conflict. She feared being labeled as too vulnerable, yet her vulnerabilities were her strengths. They defined her perspective of the world, the insights fueled by her journey. The morning of the conference dawned bright and promising, but as she stood in front of the crowd, the weight of judgment loomed large. Panic threatened to deflate her enthusiasm. Heart racing but now more resolute, she took a powerful breath, grounding herself in the understanding of her dual role, both a scholar and a storyteller. As she stepped onto the stage, her nervousness began to morph into excitement. Instead of detailing her structured arguments, she led with a story from her notebook, an intimate moment from her past, a challenge she faced, and how it shaped her views on education. The audience hung on to her every word, their breaths seemingly synchronized with her narrative. She could see in their eyes not just judgment but connection and empathy. With each story, her voice grew bolder. The audience shifted, no longer mere spectators but active participants in her journey. Their reactions, smiles, nods, and wide eyes buoyed her confidence. The more transparent she became, the stronger her message resonated. She concluded her presentation with a message of hope and innovation. The applause that followed felt electrifying, yet guilt crept into her mind as she thought of Robert. Sitting again in the audience, he wore a faint smile that spoke volumes, an acknowledgement perhaps of her independence. After the session ended, approached by fellow students and educators eager to discuss her ideas, she felt a sense of belonging. She realized her journey of acceptance was not just about finding her voice, but about connecting that voice to the broader conversation around. Education. As she mingled, Lily caught Robert's eye. His encouraging note reaffirmed her growth. But a new realization blocked her path. This excitement also came with responsibilities and choices. How would she ensure these connections remained genuine, and that they truly reflected her identity, utterly free from the shadows of mentorship? With her heart racing as she pondered this, she felt the spark of a new challenge just beyond reach. What lay ahead seemed uncertain and exhilarating, yet one thing was certain: she was ready to confront whatever came next on her journey toward authentic selfhood. What would she discover when she dared to fully own both her voice and her identity in the landscape of her chosen field? The buzz of post-conference excitement lingered in Lily's chest, yet her fervor was tinged with caution. Surrounded by a flurry of eager discussion and lively debates, she found herself wishing to connect further with those who had come to hear her story. The reality of networking, however, bore its own weight. Each encounter prompted a flutter of uncertainty. Was she indeed worthy of their attention, or was she simply riding the coattails of her mentor's influence? As she navigated the sea of conversations, her mind churned with questions about her identity and the professional persona she hoped to cultivate. What did she truly want to achieve in this vast educational landscape? The mere thought of defining a clear path felt daunting, as if each choice could tilt her towards becoming another shadow of Robert. Lily recognized the patterns of her self-doubt. It was a familiar dance. She had moments of euphoria, punctuated by pangs of inadequacy. Resolutely, she decided it was time to refine a sense of purpose. No more hovering behind the safety of another's shadow. She needed to establish her own identity both as a professional and as a burgeoning leader. That evening, she penned a plan to explore her interests in educational reform. Rather than simply surfing the wave of established ideas, she would prioritize innovative concepts that spoke to her heart and resonated with her own narrative. She was determined to develop her voice as an advocate, emphasizing the importance of emotional engagement in learning. That, she thought, was what set her apart. The idea ignited an inner fire. Lily envisioned starting a blog where she could unpack her thoughts on education, share her discoveries, and engage a broader audience. She imagined weaving personal reflections with her insights on transformative teaching techniques. This project felt like a bridge to authenticity, a means to articulate her unique position in the discourse around education. Yet, even as she plotted this new venture, another layer of angst emerged. The pressure to produce quality content weighed heavily on her. Was she equipped to navigate this new world of public engagement? Her mind was a battleground of potential scenarios. Each draft she imagined could either bolster her emergence as a thought leader or expose her vulnerabilities in a more public forum. The following weeks became a whirlwind of late nights and early mornings. On multiple occasions, Lily pored over drafts, oscillating between exhilaration and dread. Would her audience truly connect with the narratives she shared? Despite moments of clarity, her resolve encountered further obstacles. She revisited conversations with peers who seemed to thrive with confidence and poise. Doubt began to rear its familiar head, its whispers insidious, echoing the fears of inadequacy that once stifled her voice. What if they don't see you as credible? Echoed in her thoughts. What if your story isn't powerful enough? But then, something shifted within her. During a particularly challenging day, while taking a break in the campus garden, she overheard two students discussing her recent presentation. Their admiration was genuine, their respect palpable, and as they spoke of the impact her story had on them, something inside her clicked. Lily realized she was already forging her identity, no matter the insecurities that plagued her. She had captivated her audience with her truths, and the connection she fostered was far more meaningful than any accolade ever bestowed by position or title. This wasn't merely about visibility, it was about crafting a genuine narrative from her experiences. With a renewed sense of purpose, she turned back to her drafts, focusing no longer on the fear of judgment, but instead on the power of connection. As she prepared to share her newly finished blog post, she felt a surge of anticipation mingled with anxiety. It would require stepping fully into the light, unfiltered, raw, and honest. How vulnerable could she afford to be? How open would she dare to express the depths of her journey? Little did she know, an unexpected response awaited her, one that would challenge not just her blog, but her very understanding of her role in the educational sphere. What lay beyond this leap of faith was a confrontation she hadn't anticipated, and she was about to unlock a door that could either fortify her resolve or crack her foundation. The moment Lily hit publish on her blog post, an overwhelming wave of sense flooded her mind. With a single click, Her words were laid bare to the world, an echo of her thoughts now open for scrutiny. What had once felt like a tentative expression was now a leap into the deep end of her aspirations to connect and engage. Her heart raced as she eagerly awaited feedback, oscillating between excitement and anxiety. She imagined the myriad of potential responses, accolades, critiques, indifference. Every possibility twisted in her stomach, tangling her excitement in a web of uncertainty. Hours passed, and each notification ping felt like a tiny electric jolt, leading to a tightening of her chest. When the first comment appeared, it was a short yet sharp affirming statement. "Thank you for sharing. Your story resonates with me." The words lit a small flame inside her, an acknowledgement even if from a single voice. As she read through more comments, each one igniting a spark of validation, the touched hearts exemplified her evolving identity. But with praise came a few naysayers, asserting her lack of depth and experience. Each critique landed like a stone on her fragile confidence. Grappling with this mixed response, Lily confronted an uncomfortable truth: authenticity often opened the door to vulnerability, and vulnerability invited criticism. How would she navigate these waters? How much weight would she place on the opinions of strangers? During an evening reflective walk, she considered her motivations. Why did she publish her thoughts? Was it merely to gain recognition, or did she genuinely want to forge connections through shared narratives? The answer flickered against her turbulent emotions. This wasn't solely about the accolades, it was about the conversations her reflections could prompt, the change they could inspire, and the communities they could foster. Drawing inspiration from this realization, she crafted a framework for her next post, a deeper exploration of a topic that both intrigued and troubled her: educational inequity. As she conceptualized the new piece, she felt the need to blend statistical data with personal narrative to cultivate empathy. Framing her approach became a balancing act of heartfelt storytelling and factual grounding. Days of research and reflection followed, yet the dark shadows of doubt crept back. In considering her mixed reception, she contemplated how to position herself as credible. Burrowed in her thoughts, she reflected on the two students she'd overheard in the garden. Their enthusiasm reminded her that her voice had potential. She had something valuable to offer her perspective. And yet, each time she envisioned sharing her evolving narrative, a gnawing fear materialized: what if you're not an expert? What if they see through you? Fueled by this struggle, a new question emerged: how could she redefine success for herself? This necessitated a conversation with Robert. If there was anyone who could help her navigate these newfound challenges, it was him. Yet, asking for assistance felt like an admission of inadequacy, as if reaching out would confirm that she was still tethered to his legacy. But this was about her growth, not his shadows. The following day, courage propelled her to seek him out. Initially, the dialogue revolved around her blog, but slowly, she articulated her uncertainty about her next steps. As she spoke, his expressions morphed from interest to concern. This journey is part of finding your own voice, Lily. But remember, establishing credibility isn't about perfection. His words felt like an anchor amid her tumultuous sea of feelings. She needed to trust her story and her perspective, but what would it take for that trust to flourish? The moment hung heavy between them, charged with the potential for mutual understanding yet fraught with complexities that remained unpacked. As they delved deeper into unraveling her concerns, it struck her she might not just need Roberts as a mentor but as an ally in redefining her narrative. Yet the implications of such a partnership loomed large, challenging her to reconsider if she was ready for the entanglements that came with it. Was it the right time to ally herself with someone whose identity loomed so large in her path to discovery? Or would forging this connection sidetrack her growth, anchoring her once more to the very doubts she sought to shed? The reality of this pivotal moment crystallized in her mind. It was time to confront the expectations she felt overshadowing her. Would she step into an alliance, or walk alone on a path defined by her own making, however uncertain it seemed? Each option looked like a mirror reflecting her desires and fears. The next step could lead to empowerment or deeper self-doubt. Whatever was on the horizon, she knew it would demand all of her courage. Lily's resolve stiffened as she wrestled with the looming decision about Robert. His offer was tempting, the idea of collaboration promised strength, yet it felt like a tether. Still, there lingered an undeniable strength in community, and if her goal was to cultivate empathy, perhaps this connection could indeed advance that mission. As she ambled through the familiar paths of her neighborhood, determination fueled her steps. Each crack in the pavement echoed her doubts, but she shifted her focus inward. She needed to dissect her feelings. Was it fear of inadequacy or an inability to step outside of Robert's shadow? Perhaps it was both. An unexpected push emerged when she decided to write a list of pros and cons about working with Robert. The act itself felt revolutionary. It transformed nebulous anxieties into tangible elements she could evaluate. The pen scratched against the paper, birthing clarity. Pro, access to his extensive network. Con, potential overshadowing of her voice. It was a start, a roadmap towards understanding her trajectory, but the real revelation hit when she reached the pivotal realization: the measure of her success was not merely intertwined with Robert's influence or the approval of others. Success could also stem from the authenticity she had already begun to carve out through her words, regardless of their reception. While her blog flourished, gaining traction with each post, she could not afford to bury her voice. The feedback, both uplifting and critical, was a formative process for her identity. She envisioned the next piece: education equity, and felt a surge of responsibility. It was about the narratives of those affected. Their truth needed to be heard. Perhaps in exploring this issue, she would further clarify her own identity. That evening, she sat before her laptop, fingers poised over the keyboard, but hesitation crept in. The fear of criticism loomed large again, threatening to steal her momentum. Breathing deeply, she recalled Robert's words, "Trust your story." They resonated as she began a new draft. Instead of academic citations, she narrated a personal encounter with underprivileged students she had volunteered, with a nuanced perspective depicting their struggles, dreams, and unfathomable resilience. It was empowering. Through their stories, she found her voice amplifying in strength. Each sentence became a testament to her awareness of educational inequity, shedding the constraints of pretense. With every keystroke, Lily felt more composed, which was something she had struggled to embody in public discourse. This exploration reminded her that vulnerability was not synonymous with weakness. It was an avenue to break down barriers and ignite genuine conversations. The moment she clicked save, allegorical chains broke, ushering a sense of liberation, but an unsettling truth whispered: vulnerability also magnified exposure to possible critiques. The stakes were higher now. The implications of her piece could resonate widely, for good or ill, and bring her even more scrutiny. Confidence and uncertainty clashed again within her. Would she circle back to Robert for guidance on this pivotal topic, or would that signal her hesitation? A ding from her phone startled her from her thoughts. Another comment awaited her on her previous post, a note from a reader named Sarah. "You've made me think deeply about my own experiences. Thank you." There it was again, the connection. Empowered yet uncertain, she set down her phone, confronting an unsettling choice: to lean into the strength she found through vulnerability or await Robert's guidance, perhaps risking further hesitance in stepping into her own narrative. As night settled in, the path ahead shimmered with promise and peril. The next step would either consolidate her confidence or drown her in doubt. She resolved to respond to the swirling chaos within her. The following day would yield a decision, one that could either tether her more firmly to another's influence or clear the way for her own voice to truly thrive. But before she could chart the course, a new email notification flickered across her screen, the subject line grasping her attention: urgent collaboration proposal. The implication sent a ripple through her thoughts. Was this the moment to leap, or the pivotal moment that would shift her entire direction? Lily stared at the screen, the message a siren call to her mixed emotions. The urgency of the subject line pressed on her heart, pulling at her ambition and her existing fears. This could be the door opening, offering her a leap into broader conversations and more substantial impact. Yet, it could also be another thread tying her to Robert, further clouding her unique narrative. She resisted the instinct to immediately open the email, sitting back in her chair, her thoughts simmering with a volatile mix of excitement and trepidation. What if this collaboration meant sacrificing her individual voice? Was she ready to take that risk again, especially when she had just begun to develop her own message? With leaden resolve, she picked up her pen, her thoughts racing faster than the scratches on the notepad. The words she wrote were simple but pointed. What did she want? Each question bled seamlessly into the next. Was this partnership a means to an end, or a collaboration that held potential but could suffocate her voice? As she flowed through this mental exercise, clarity began to emerge. Lily realized that her idea of success had to evolve. Her past dependence on validation from others had stifled her courage. Each time she censored her voice in fear of how it would be received diminished her growth, while each bold step she had taken, each story she had shared, had fostered both confidence and connection. The quiet ache of vulnerability resurfaced, but this time she welcomed it. She let the feelings wash over her. Therein lay her power. The recent feedback from Sarah wasn't just a compliment, it was an affirmation of her truth. Her words mattered. If she allowed herself to shine, perhaps she would inspire others to do the same. Suddenly, the email notification pinged again, breaking her reverie. This time, she steeled herself. She opened the email and read, recognizing Robert's familiar tone and rhetoric. He was enthusiastic about the collaboration, talking about projects that inspired him and how their combined efforts could foster change. He even referenced a mutual contact whose opinion she highly valued. But as she read, she felt her pulse quickening not from excitement, but from a growing resolve. A collaboration shouldn't mean subsuming herself within Robert's shadow. Instead, it could offer a platform to elevate her own ideas while anchoring in the shared passion they both held for education equity. Determinedly, she typed out a response, hands moving almost independently of her thoughts. She laid out her terms. She envisioned a partnership not rooted in hierarchy but in mentorship and equal exchange of ideas and resources where both could thrive. When she hit send, a weight lifted. For the first time in weeks, she felt the prospect of collaboration transform from a potential tether into an opportunity for empowerment. As she contemplated the new possibilities, her thoughts drifted. What if her voice wasn't just amplified through collaboration but also transformed by it? Would putting herself out there, saying both yes and no to avenues that sought to shape her, mark the path to her authentic self? Weeks passed with unexpected silence from Robert, which only added tension. Each day felt like a possibility unfolding, while uncertainty shadowed her thoughts. Yet, as she pushed through her work, she realized her focus remained on developing a platform rather than fixing on awaiting Robert's reaction. Then, as she prepared to publish her next blog post, a notification erupted across her screen, an online invitation to a prominent discussion panel on education equity, the very topic she had been passionate about. This was the moment, a public forum where she could share her voice, irrespective of Robert's influence. Now the rush of anticipation surged within her alongside the familiar tingle of doubt. Would she assert her perspective in such an arena, or would she falter in fear? This was not just another opportunity, it was a stage. The stark realization dawned: either she would seize the moment, or she would lose it once again. The stakes had never felt higher. With the panel just a few days away, would her commitment to stepping into her narrative prevail, or would fear send her retreating once more into silence? Lily paced her small home office, the walls decorated with images of past accomplishments and inspiring quotes, a visual testament to her journey thus far. She stopped by the window, taking a breath of fresh air. The weight of the upcoming panel loomed heavily, yet it was strangely invigorating. It was a fork in the road, an intersection where she could either embrace her narrative or allow her doubts to constrict her. She couldn't ignore the work she had been immersing herself in. Her blog had gained traction, resonating with an audience craving genuine dialogue. The analytics were promising. Comments flooded in, encouraging her, thanking her for her authenticity. Each compliment rekindled her internal flame, a reminder of the power her words held. But now she was set to enter an arena where her voice would be magnified, dissected, perhaps criticized. This was both thrilling and terrifying. She felt a knot forming in her stomach, a physical embodiment of her anxiety. It was familiar, like an unwanted guest arriving right before a major event. Yet beneath that tension, a flicker of determination stirred. She wanted to needlessly sit back. Wasn't an option this time. She slumped into her chair, staring at the blinking cursor on her laptop. If she had a solid framework for her talk, it would anchor her amidst any turbulence. Her fingers hesitated above the keys. This was a chance to articulate not just her thoughts on education equity but also to reveal the essence of her journey. She needed to connect the personal motivations that fueled her passion. Suddenly, memories of her past flickered across her mind, moments of doubt, of feeling voiceless when her perspective should have mattered. The molding influence of Robert and his strong, imposing manner consumed her thoughts. Would he try to dismiss her ideas if they were too divergent from his own? But there was a realization that pricked the surface: she was not that girl anymore. Success to her now meant standing firm even when met with resistance. With renewed energy, she began to draft her speech. She would start with her roots, her struggles, and the lessons she had learned, the courage to speak up even in silence. This was the authenticity she had so carefully cultivated. It was the core of her journey. As she typed, the clock ticked ominously, rushing her toward the deadline. She slid into an intense focus, thoughts spilling forth with cathartic urgency. And then, a flash of insight struck her. She would open with a story. A narrative that reflected the very gravity of educational disparities, and her voice, her unique perspective, would shine through, undiluted by the shadows of her past connections. Each paragraph built momentum, igniting a passion for honest discourse. She envisioned herself on stage, speaking directly to the audience, forging connections that might give rise to collaborations much more meaningful than anything she had experienced before. When she finally hit save on her draft, the surge of accomplishment swept over her. She was ready for the panel. The fears that had gripped her started to dissolve. She would stand, not as a mere participant in someone else's narrative, but as a dynamic contributor with a voice of her own. But even as she reveled in this progress, uncertainty lingered. Would her message resonate? Would she falter under the glare of scrutiny? The monologue composed, the inklings of self-doubt slithered back. The stakes felt higher than before. As she moved to prepare her visuals, a notification pinged on her computer. An email. Robert's acknowledgement had finally arrived, but the subject line chilled her. Let us discuss the direction of the collaboration. She hesitated, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation coursing through her veins. This was the moment she had to confront him directly and redefine the dynamic. Would she align with his vision or firmly hold her ground? The tension swelled as the implications of her response dawned on her. This was no longer just about speaking at the panel. It was about navigating her future, confronting Robert's approach, and solidifying her identity. The time had come to face not only her fears but the very essence of her ambitions. How would she step into this confrontation? Would it lead her to reaffirm her autonomy, or would it risk unraveling everything she had fought to build? Lily stepped into the sunlit conference room, her heart pounding in anticipation. Weeks of preparing for the panel on education equity had led to this moment, a public declaration of her voice. As she glanced around, her eyes landed on Robert, seated among the audience. The familiar rush of uncertainty surged within her, but she gritted her teeth, refocusing on her purpose. Today, she would unveil her essence, merging her experiences with her research, channeling her inner strength that had manifested through perseverance. This time, she wasn't stepping into Robert's shadow, rather, she was illuminating her own path. As the moderator introduced her, a moment of clarity enveloped her, a recognition of having conquered her fears, of having transformed into a force she barely knew existed. When she approached the podium, a sense of empowerment coursed through her. Gone were the echoes of doubt that haunted her throughout her educational journey. With each word, she recounted the struggles that fueled her passion for educational equity. The audience hung on her every syllable as she articulated her experiences, weaving in the narratives of marginalized students she had encountered. This was a moment not just to speak, but to ignite connection and foster dialogue. The applause that followed felt deserved. She had claimed a space within the community. After the panel, she was approached by various educators and students who resonated with her story. The encouragement solidified her confidence. She had transformed from a girl yearning for acceptance into a young woman on the cusp of influence. She had proven to herself that her voice mattered. As she left the venue, her phone buzzed with notifications. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, commending her authenticity. The validation was profound. It was the external recognition she had longed for, but this time, it felt completely different. This approval wasn't merely a reflection of Robert's guidance. It was rooted in her own experiences, in the genuine emotion she had shared. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The connections she had forged opened up new opportunities, including another offer to collaborate with experienced educators on a community project aimed at enhancing educational resources for underprivileged schools. Unlike the previous proposal, this collaboration felt like a merging of equals, a voice interwoven with seasoned advocates striving for similar goals. In a follow-up conversation with Robert, she conveyed her intentions about the collaboration. He listened, and she noted the acknowledgement in his eyes. Stepping beyond the dynamic they had shared, she articulated how she wished to define her own identity while still valuing his mentorship. I want to contribute, she asserted, but I also need to cultivate my own voice. To her satisfaction, Robert validated her thoughts and expressed pride in her growth. A recognition felt overdue, but finally deserved. Later that week, she published another blog post, reflecting on her recent experiences and sharing insights about embracing vulnerability as a pivotal element of impactful storytelling. This time, she knew she was the architect of her own narrative, rooted in authenticity rather than comparison. As the comments trickled in, each one repeated the same refrain: "Thank you for bravely sharing your voice." Validation blossomed once again, reinforcing the strength she had discovered within herself. With her network expanding, she embraced invitations to speak at local schools, sharing her journey and inspiring others who felt lost in their own struggles. Each presentation solidified her newfound confidence. The entrepreneur spirit flickered behind her determination to turn her blog into a platform dedicated to educational equity, amplifying diverse narratives. By the end of the year, Lily stood at the podium, engaged in discussions about meaningful reform. Her previous insecurities about sharing personal stories melted away, replaced by an unwavering belief in her purpose. The audience listened eagerly. Igniting a larger conversation shaped by shared experiences, her growth had come full circle. In the quiet moments reflecting on her journey, she acknowledged a pivotal truth: competing with her past had only held her captive. Instead, embracing her history and insights fostered a richer understanding of herself and the world. She was no longer just Lily, the abandoned girl. She was a voice of authenticity, an advocate for change, and an emerging leader ready to confront the complexities of the educational landscape. Determined to never retreat to the shadows again, she grinned as she realized one potent reality: she had achieved personal fulfillment through embracing her authentic self. And that was the true meaning of success. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey of empowerment with at least 5 friends who need to embark on their transformative paths. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that fuel authentic growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your thoughts and theories about Lily's incredible journey. This is the moment to show your support.